Welcome to lesson 3-7 using formulas. Alright, a formula is an equation that shows a relationship among certain quantities. A formula usually contains two or more variables, and that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about one formula, which is pretty famous, is distance is equal to rate times time. Something that you should be familiar with. The other one is perimeter, which is the distance around a geometric figure. We're going to be mostly using rectangles where length and width is generally in that direction. There's so many different ways to write the formula for perimeter, but the basic is using the distributive property in this equation. Makes it easier. And then we also have area, the measure of the surface enclosed by a figure. And the figure we're going to use the most, once again, is a rectangle, which means we just want to know what the surface is, or its surface area. And that formula doesn't really seem to change for a rectangle. It's just length times width. We do know that area is always, units are always squared. That's something that you need to know. And in perimeter, the units are not squared. Alright, so the key concept here, of course, is perimeter of a rectangle. The perimeter of a rectangle is twice the sum of the length and the width. As you can see here, it's written down three different ways, and the shape that you usually see is right there. I prefer to use, for myself, this formula right here, but it's whatever formula you can remember to get the job done. Next key concept, of course, is the area of a rectangle. The area of a rectangle is the product of the length and width. You just have to identify the length and width and multiply those two together, and you get the area. And as I told you before, very important concept, the units are squared, but length and width are not. So area is always squared. Science. What is the rate in miles per hour of a dolphin that travels 120 miles in 4 hours? Well, that looks like to me the distance formula, which of course is d is equal to rt. There's a relationship among all three of these letters or variables. Let's talk about them right now. Alright, r means rate. In this problem, it says what is the rate, and it should be in miles per hour. So we don't know what it is, but we know the answer should be, or the unit should be miles per hour. Now distance is usually measured in feet, inches. So we're looking for a number that represents distance. And in this case, we can see it right here, 120 miles. So distance, or d, is equal to 120 miles. And then in our formula, t is time, and we're looking for a number that has a unit of time like seconds, and in this case we have it right here, 4 hours. So time is equal to 4 hours. What are we going to do with this information? We're going to plug and chug. What are we going to plug and chug? D is equal to RT. Here we go. D, 120, is equal to R, which I don't know, times time. And there you go, ladies and gentlemen. What do we have? We have an equation that we can solve for. 120 is equal to 4R. Let's isolate that R. We do that by dividing both sides by 4. And then we get that R is equal to 120 divided by 4 is 30. We do remember that it said in the original problem that we should use miles per hour. And that's what we're going to use. There's our answer. And it will make sense to you, of course, if you remember when we, beginning of the year, we talked about units. In this slide, we're going to find the perimeter of the rectangle. And once again, we talked about this, but we'll just put it up here. Perimeter is equal to the one that I like to use, 2 times the quantity of L and W. Here we go. All right, we just need to identify. Well, it says find perimeter, so we don't know what perimeter is. So that'll be left alone as a variable. Do we know what the length is? Sure is right here. We can call that the length. So I'm going to plug in 11. Do we know what the width is? Sure is. It's 5. We could use the distributive property, but I prefer the fact that since these are like terms, go ahead and put them together. We get 16. 2 times 16 is 32. Now this is very important. We have units. Perimeter is just the units, so let's go ahead and put inches to make our answer complete. Next slide, it says the perimeter of a rectangle is 28 meters. Its width is 8 meters. Find the length. Oh, okay. So we already know what the perimeter is. It told us that it's 28. It told us what its width is, which is 8. And of course, we need to find out what the length is. So that's our unknown. So let's go back to our formula. So we know what P is. So 28 is equal to 2. And then there's my parenthesis. I know what 8 is, but I don't know, or I know what width is, but I just don't know what the length is. Now it's time to break out the distributive property. Go ahead and do that. So I have 28 is equal to 16 plus 2L. I'm going to go ahead and try to isolate this L, our length, and to do that I'm going to go ahead and subtract 16 from both sides because of backwards PEMDAS. I get 12, bring down the equal sign. The 16s cancel out or give me 0, and I'm with 2L. Divide both sides by 2, so I can isolate the L, or the length. Now I have L is equal to 6. Now I need to go back and figure out what unit it is. And in the problem, I have meters. So that means my length must be in meters. And that completes my answer. The length is 6 meters long. Alright, in this slide it says find the area of a rectangle with the length 15 meters and the width 7 meters. As you can see, we have a figure here to help you out here. Let's just remind everyone that area is A is equal to length times width. Alright, now we're just going to identify which one's the length and the width. And in this case, length is 15 and width is 7. So we plug and chug. My area is 7 times 15. And 7 times 15 is 105. Now I have to deal with the units. If you remember, area is always squared units. The units were meters, so I need to square them. If that doesn't make sense, if you remember something like this, meters times meters. Leaves us with what? Meters squared. And that's because 15 is a meter and 7 is a meter. And that makes our answer complete. On this slide it says the area of a rectangle is 45 square feet. Its length is 9 feet. Find its width. Alright, so that means I already know what A is. It is 45. I know what length is. It's 9. Width is my unknown. So going back to the formula, I have 45, because that's my A, is equal to length times width, which I don't know. And now I'm just going to go ahead and divide both sides by 9 to isolate the variable. That leaves me with W, because 9 divided by 9 is 1. And 45 divided by 9 is 5. Now, we already know that area is in squared, or squared feet. And we know that length is in feet. So that leaves the question, what unit should I make width? Now, width is not area. It's just like length. So if length is feet, width must be feet. And that makes my answer complete. The width is 5 feet.